Hello everyone, welcome to Learn with Wasim. This is Muhammad Wasim Khan, an instructor of your project planning and management course. As you know, that in the previous two lessons of project schedule management, we have discussed the three different processes like plan schedule management, define activities, and then how to sequence those activities. Today we are going to discuss the next process, that is how to estimate those activity durations. In this particular technique, we will discuss the inputs, tools and techniques, and some outputs. Estimating the activity duration is the process of estimating the number of work periods that are needed to complete individual activities with estimated resources. So this is actually a process in which we estimate the number of periods that an individual activity will require to be complete. So um, here we actually estimate the starting and the ending times of each and every activity. This process provides the amount of time each activity will take to complete, which is actually a major input into the developed schedule process. Estimating activity duration uses information on activity scope of work, required resource types, estimated resource quantities, and resource calendars. So in this particular process, we actually estimate the number of work periods that an activity need to be completed. We estimate different materials and the equipment that will be used in any particular activity. The duration estimate is progressively elaborated, and the process considers the quality and availability of the input data. All data and assumptions that support duration estimating are documented for each estimate of activity durations. So for this particular process, we have a lot of input that you can see on the screen, and we have some tools and techniques and outputs as well. So the inputs, let's talk about the input first. Inputs include the schedule management plan, the activity list and activity attributes that we have already discussed. As you know, that activity list include the number of different activities that are needed to be completed for the completion of a project. And activity attributes include all of those activities, their identifiers and their codes, their names, their descriptions, their predecessors and successors, etc. Let's talk about the activity resource requirements. The estimate activity resource requirements will have an effect on the duration of the activity. The level to which the resources assigned to the activity will significantly influence the duration of most activity. Okay, so here we actually estimate the different resources like material, like the human resource management, and some if we need an equipment or machines for different processes within a particular activity, then we will need that thing as well. So the level to which the resources assigned to the activity will significantly influence the duration of most activities. Obviously, the resources and the availability or unavailability of the resources affect or influence the duration of most of the activities. And we will discuss those effects or influences in the coming lectures. Then we have the resource calendars. The resource calendars influence the duration of the scheduled activities due to the availability of specific resources, the type of resources, and the resources with specific attributes. So as I've already discussed that, the resource calendars influence the duration of these scheduled activities because the availability or unavailability of any resource will affect the durations the most. Then we have the project scope statement that we have already discussed. Now let's move toward the risk register. So the risk register provides a list of risks along with the results of risk analysis and the risk response planning. So as you know that in risk management, inshallah, we will discuss how to identify those risks and what is the risk analysis method, and then how to respond to those particular risks. Okay, so the risk register include the number of risks that we may face in a particular project or activity, along with the results of those particular risks and the response to those risks. So this is what actually the risk register involve or include. And then we have the resource breakdown structure. And like the work breakdown structure, resource breakdown structure is actually a hierarchical structure of the identified resources by resource category and resource type. So you can see here that some of the subtopics or topics are in red color or some are black. So that means the black means that we have already discussed these topics, and the red are actually the topics that we haven't discussed yet. Okay, so we will discuss those topics, the red ones, in the coming lectures. Now, some other inputs include the enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. Enterprise environmental factors include duration estimating databases and other reference data, the productivity metrics, the published commercial information, meaning the information of the different projects or activities that have been published, and the location of team members. The organizational process assets include the historical duration information, the project calendars, the schedule methodology, and lessons learned. Now let's talk about the tools and techniques that we can use for estimating the activity durations. So we can use number of tools and techniques. The first one is the most obvious one, that's the expert judgment. An expert judgment is actually a tool which is in which actually the different experts sits, and they point out a particular problem and identify the possible solution for that particular problem, and they solve that particular problem in a more appropriate way. So expert judgment can also be used to determine whether to combine methods of estimating and how to reconcile differences between them. So, for example, the experts have already done the similar projects earlier. So, for example, an activity A is for design, activity B is for, the activity A is, for example, designing the book. For activity B is printing that particular book, and activity C is publishing that book. Okay, so if activity A, that is designing, need 5 days, and activity B needs 4 days, and activity C needs 3 days to be completed, then these days allocation or estimation of these durations are based on the expert judgments. Then we have the analogous estimating. Analogous estimating is a technique for estimating the duration or cost of any activity or project using historical data from a similar activity or project. So, in analogous estimation process, we actually estimate the durations or cost of different activities or projects from the historical data of the previous similar activities or projects that have already been done. So that is called analogous estimating. यानी एनालॉग estimating में हम जब किसी प्रोजेक्ट की या एक्टिविटी की ड्यूरेशन और कॉस्ट को एस्टिमेट करते हैं, तो वो हमने जो सिमिलर प्रीवियस एक्टिविटी या प्रोजेक्ट्स परफॉर्म की होती हैं उसकी डेटा पे बेस करते हैं। फॉर एग्जांपल अगर एक प्रोजेक्ट हम कहते हैं कि फॉर एग्जांपल एक्टिविटी ए जो है तो वो पिछले प्रोजेक्ट में हमने 5 दिनों में परफॉर्म की थी, तो यहाँ भी हम कहेंगे कि इस जो प्रोजेक्ट है, ठीक है, ये जो नया प्रोजेक्ट है जिसको हम करने वाले हैं, इसकी एक्टिविटी ए भी 5 दिनों में कंप्लीट होगी। So analogous estimating uses parameter from a previous similar project such as duration, budget, size, weight, and complexity is the basis of estimating the same parameter and measure for a future project. So we can actually estimate the durations, the budget, the size, the weight, and the complexity of a project based on the historical data of the similar previous project. So this technique relies on the actual durations of the previous similar project is the basis for estimating the durations. Generally less costly and less time consuming than other techniques, but it is also less accurate. So analogous estimation में हम क्या करते हैं कि हम different duration और cost of an activity को हम estimate करते हैं based on the historical data from the previous similar projects, ठीक है, उसकी बेस पे हम जो है एस्टिमेशन करते हैं, ठीक है, यानी प्रीवियस सिमिलर प्रोजेक्ट्स में हम जो डिफरेंट एक्टिविटीज को जो टाइमिंग दी होती है, तो वो इसी प्रोजेक्ट की डिफरेंट एक्टिविटीज पे भी हम वही टाइमिंग जो है यूजुअली रिकमेंड करते हैं। तो ये तो एक बड़ा लेस टाइम कंज्यूमिंग और लेस कॉस्टली प्रोसेस ऑफ टेक्निक है, लेकिन इसकी एक्यूरेसी जो है वो इतनी ज्यादा नहीं है। The next one is parametric estimation. In parametric estimation, it is actually an estimating technique in which an algorithm is used to calculate the cost or duration based on historical data and project parameters. तो हम यहाँ पर भी जो है हिस्टोरिकल डेटा और प्रोजेक्ट पैरामीटर को कंसीडर करते हैं, लेकिन हम कुछ मैथमेटिक्स या स्टैटिस्टिकल टेक्निक्स या स्टैटिस्टिकल मेथड्स हम यूज करते हैं कि हम एस्टिमेट करें डिफरेंट कॉस्ट को या ड्यूरेशंस को। Parametric estimating uses a statistical relationship between historical data and other variables. For example, अगर आप देखें तो कंस्ट्रक्शन में हम स्क्वायर फीट लेते हैं, ठीक है, तो उसके लिए फिर हम एक नॉर्मल और एक सिंपल जो है स्टैटिस्टिकल जिसे आप कहते हैं कि मेथड्स जो है हम यूज करते हैं। फॉर एग्जांपल एक स्क्वायर फीट एक कंस्ट्रक्शन की में हम एक घर बनाने की में एक ड्यूटी है जिसकी एक स्क्वायर फीट को हम एक दिन में कंप्लीट करते हैं, तो 100 स्क्वायर फीट को हम जो है वो 100 दिनों में कंप्लीट कर सकते हैं। Okay, so I'll explain it in this example in English as well. You can see an example with the red marker that if any activity in a construction take one square foot, in which one square foot actually take 1 day. So 100 square feet will take 100 days simply. Okay. Activity durations can be quantitatively determined by multiplying the quantity of work to be performed by labor hours per unit of work. Okay. For example, I'll explain this bullet here. For example, activity duration on a design project is estimated by the number of drawings multiplied by the number of labor hours per drawing. For example, 100 drawings for example, one drawing is performed by two neighbors. So 100 will be performed by how much? Obviously 200. Okay. Or if 10, drawings are, drawn by five laborers, then for example, sorry, one, a drawing is performed by uh, 5 laborers, then the tail will be drawn by 50. Okay, so these are actually this very simple mathematical calculations that we can perform in parametric estimation. Sorry for some uh, you know I didn't explain very well the calculation here. But I hope you understood this particular slide. Okay, so let me summarize this parametric estimation so that it becomes more clear to you. Parametric estimation is actually a technique in which we use the historical data, but we actually perform some statistical or mathematical calculation here as well. Okay, for example, as I told you that, for example, in construction we use the square feet um, unit. So if 1 square feet is constructed in 1 day, and that means that 100 square feet will be constructed in 100 days. Okay, or similarly, you can see here in this particular example that if we have one uh, you know one drawing is, for example, drawn by 5 persons, then 10 will be drawn by how much? Okay, so that will 50. So yeah, this is the whole parametric estimation um, technique. Then we have another technique, and we call it the 3-point estimation or 3-point estimating technique. And it is actually a PERT technique, that is PERT being the program evaluation and review technique. And why we are using the 3-point estimation? It is because estimating the uncertainty and risk, or considering the estimating uncertainty and risk in a single point activity duration. So that's why we can say the 3-point estimation process is a bit more accurate. And the accuracy of single point activity duration estimate may be improved by considering the uncertainty and risk. And we consider that uncertainty and risk in this particular process. We call it in this particular technique, we call it the 3-point estimation technique. So this concept is originated with the program evaluation and review technique, as we have already discussed it. PERT uses 3 estimates to define an approximate range for an activity's durations. So in PERT we call it a 3-point estimation because we use the three activities duration here. The first one is the most likely time, or the most likely duration. The second one is optimistic time or optimistic duration. And the third one is the pessimistic time or pessimistic duration. So let's talk about the most frequent likely first. Based on the duration of activity, given the resources likely to be assigned, their productivity, realistic expectations of availability, dependencies on other participants, and interruptions. So most likely is actually the duration that we can say that um, this particular activity will be performed most likely in 5 days. For example, activity A will be performed in 5 days, most likely. Okay, so we consider different things like their productivity, realistic expectations of availability of the materials, dependencies on the other participants, and some interruptions. So we consider these things, and based on these things we can say that, okay, the most likely duration of activity A is 5 days. What is optimistic? Optimistic mean the activity duration based on analysis of the best case scenario for the activity. Like in optimistic duration, we actually, for example, we have for most likely, um, we have an activity can be completed in 10 days. Then in optimistic, the same activity A will be, the duration for same activity A will be 7. It won't be 10. Why? Because it is actually an optimistic duration. Okay, so an optimistic duration is actually the best case scenario. यानी इसमें हम ये कहते हैं कि सब कुछ ठीक होगा, कोई प्रॉब्लम भी नहीं होगा, कोई क्लाइमेट की कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होगा, बारिश वगैरह नहीं होंगे, जो है तमाम मटेरियल्स टाइम पे अवेलेबल होगा, तो ह्यूमन रिसोर्स जो है वो सारा कुछ अवेलेबल होगा, ठीक है. So in optimistic, we actually consider that the whole condition will be, excellent and perfect. Everything will be available. All the resources will be easily available. The human resource will be easily available. So and everything is good. So in that particular condition, we can say the duration is optimistic duration. And the third one is pessimistic duration. Pessimistic means the activity duration based on analysis of the worst case scenario for the activity. Like here we can say, okay, there may be some availability of the problems, sorry, availability of materials. We can say that, okay, the condition won't be very good. The climate won't be very, favorable for a particular project, and so on. So these are, the worst cases. So in worst cases, we can, um, add some more days as well. For example, अगर आप देखें कि एक्टिविटी ए को बेस्ड ऑन मोस्ट लाइकली हमने 10 दिन में कंप्लीट करनी थी, लेकिन ऑप्टिमिस्टिक केस में हमने 7 दिन दिए, क्योंकि हम ये सोच रहे थे कि ये बेस्ट कंडीशन है और उसमें कोई मसला नहीं आएगा, तो 7 दिन में एक्टिविटी एक कंप्लीट हो जाएगी. लेकिन अगर हम पेसिमिस्टिक के बेस पे देखें, जो कि वर्स्ट केस सिनेरियो है, तो फिर हम जो है 5-6 दिन जो है हम ज्यादा ऐड करेंगे. फॉर एग्जांपल 15 डेज में हम कह सकते हैं कि एक्टिविटी एक कंप्लीट होगी, क्योंकि 5 दिन जो है वो हम उस वर्स्ट के सिनेरियो की वजह से लगा देते हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल इसकी मैं एक अच्छी एग्जांपल आपको दे सकता हूँ कि अगर क्लासेस वगैरह में कोई प्रॉब्लम ना हो, ठीक है, इस सेमेस्टर की हम बात करें कि इस सेमेस्टर में क्लासेस को की कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, और सब कुछ जो है बिल्कुल टाइम पे जा रहा है, कोई छुट्टियां दरमियान में नहीं आ रही, कोई और मसाइल इसमें ना हो, ठीक है, सब कुछ टाइम पे हो, तो आपका सेमेस्टर जो है वो एग्जैक्ट टाइम पे खत्म हो जाएगा. लेकिन जिस तरह अब की सिचुएशन है, यानी अब अगर आप देख सकते हैं जो कोविड-19 की वजह से जो सिचुएशन बनी हुई है, कि जिसमें जो है डिलेज भी आ सकती है, इंटरनेट प्रॉब्लम्स भी आ सकते हैं, तो इससे आपका सेमेस्टर जो है वो शायद 1 हफ्ता, डेढ़ हफ्ता जो है वो एक्सटेंड हो, लेट हो जाए. So that is the pessimistic condition. Expected duration is actually the time that can be calculated using two commonly used formulas. So we can use the expected duration by combining all of the above three different duration, that is most likely, optimistic and pessimistic. And that time is called expected duration. Expected durations, for expected duration we have two formulas. The first one is triangular distribution. So in triangular distribution, the expected time is optimistic time plus most likely time or duration plus pessimistic time and duration divided by 3. So it is actually a simple average. But in beta distribution, which is actually based on the per technique, so the expected time is optimistic time plus 4 times of the most likely duration plus pessimistic duration divided by 6. So this using these two different formulas, we can get the expected durations, and there won't be very a huge difference between the values that we can um, that we will get either from this or this formula. बड़ा कम डिफरेंस होगा, पॉइंट्स में जो है वो डिफरेंस हो सकता है. Then we have the group decision making techniques, and you know that we have already discussed the group decision making techniques like the brainstorming or the Delphi or nominal group techniques that can be used for engaging the team members to improve the estimate accuracy and commitment to the emerging estimates. And then another one is reserve analysis. Okay, yes, this thing is very important. Reserve analysis is very important. Duration estimates may include contingency reserves into the project schedule time, or it may include is the management reserve. So we have two reserve analysis. We have two reserves. Sorry, the first one is contingency reserve, and the second one is you can say management reserve. So sometimes the activities or the projects need some reserve, like um, uh, we may face different risks. So in order to adjust those risks, we need to assign some reserves to those activities and durations. For example, activity A, B, C, D, you can see here, A may complete in 7 days, and B will complete in 8, and C will complete in 12 days, and D will complete in 5 days. But we are actually adding 2 more days to each of them because we may face some risk. So these are just called reserve. If we talk about the contingency reserve, then contingency reserves are actually the estimated duration which is allocated for identified risks that are accepted and for which contingent or mitigation responses are developed. So contingency reserve are actually those estimated durations um, which is allocated for identified risk, यानी वो रिस्क जो कि हमने आइडेंटिफाई की हो कि ये रिस्क जो है हम फेस कर सकते हैं किसी भी एक्टिविटी या प्रोजेक्ट को परफॉर्म करने के लिए। तो उन रिस्क को जो है हैंडल करने के लिए, टैकल करने के लिए हम जो इजाफी यानी जो रिजर्व रखते हैं, तो उसको हम कंटिजेंसी रिजर्व कहते हैं। एंड इट इज एसोसिएटेड विद द नोन अननोन्स, यानी हमें पहले से रिस्क का पता है कि ये रिस्क हैं, लेकिन ये नहीं पता होता ऑब्वियसली कि ये रिस्क कहाँ पे हम फेस कर सकते हैं, या हम तमाम रिस्क फेस कर सकते हैं या नहीं, लेकिन इतना पता होता है कि ये रिस्क जो है इस पर्टिकुलर एक्टिविटी को परफॉर्म करने में हम फेस कर सकते हैं। ठीक है, तो उसके लिए हम रिजर्व रखते हैं। ठीक है, एक्स्ट्रा मटेरियल लगते हैं या एक्स्ट्रा डेज लगते हैं, अगर पीरियड्स की बात करें या नंबर ऑफ या टाइम की बात करें। ठीक है, या इसको हम परसेंटेज के फॉर्म में भी रख सकते हैं। So that is called contingency reserve. The second one is management reserve. Management reserve are actually a specified amount of the project duration withheld for management control purposes and are reserved for unforeseen work. यानी यहाँ पे unforeseen work या unforeseen risk, यानी वो जो कि हमने कंसिडर नहीं की होती या हमें पता नहीं होती, लेकिन फिर भी हम जो है उसकी मैनेजमेंट की कंट्रोल पर्पसेस के लिए हम कुछ रिजर्व रख लेते हैं। जिस तरह कंटिजेंसी में तो हमें पता था कि यार ये रिस्क हम फेस कर सकते हैं। मैनेजमेंट रिजर्व्स में ये है कि हमें उस रिस्क का तो पता नहीं होता, लेकिन फिर भी हम जो है वो रिजर्व जो है वो कंट्रोल मैनेजमेंट कंट्रोल पर्पसेस के लिए जो है वो रख लेते हैं। ठीक है, सो दैट्स व्हाई वी कॉल इट अननोन अननोन्स, यानी ना रिस्क का पता है, ठीक है, अनफोर्सीन वर्क है, और ना हमें ये पता है कि कब ये रिस्क जो है ये हैपन होंगे। ठीक है, so management reserve is not included in the schedule baseline, but it is actually a part of the overall project duration requirements की part हो सकता है। Okay, let's talk about the outputs, and we have just two outputs here. That the first one is activity duration estimate, and the second one is the project documents updates. Activity duration estimates are actually the quantitative assessments of the likely number of time periods that are required to complete an activity. तो एस्टिमेट एक्टिविटी ड्यूरेशन एस्टिमेट जिस तरह आपको पता है, ठीक है, कि नाम से जाहिर है कि what actually the activity duration estimates. So this is an output of this particular process. We actually estimate the most possible and appropriate duration for a particular activity and project. Okay, so duration estimate do not include any legs. I hope you know what actually leg is. We have discussed the leads and leg in the previous lecture. So activity duration estimates may include some indication of the range of possible results. For example, 2 weeks plus minus days. For example, we can say that this activity will be performed in 2 days plus minus 2 days. Like we can say, okay, add 2 more days. There may be some risks that we can face, or some problems we can face. So that's why we have to assign 2 more days to this particular activity. Okay? Or we can add the 15% in percentage. For example, we can say that 15% probability of exceeding 3 weeks. There is a probability of 15% that this particular activity will exceed from 3 weeks, which indicates a high probability of 85% that the activity will take 3 weeks or less. Okay, I think this is a very simple English and very easy to understand. And the last one is the project document update. So obviously, if you estimate the activity duration, then you will go towards the relevant projects and you will have to update those project documents, especially the activity attributes. Okay, yeah, and assumptions made in activity attributes. Remember that activity attributes include the activities, their names, their identifiers, their codes, their predecessors, their durations. Duration, you can see this is the activity attributes, and we have identifier, name, description, predecessor, and durations here as well. Okay, so assumptions made in developing the activity duration estimates such as skill levels and availability, as well as basis of estimates for the durations. So that was, the process we wanted to discuss today. Inshallah, we will, discuss another process in the coming lecture. Now, if you have any question, you can please ask me using. You can email me on my email address. That is, presented or added to the last slide of this particular lecture. And you can also WhatsApp me using my cell number, um, or you can, ask me question on MS Tools, MS Teams as well. Till then, thank you. Bye bye.